Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. Perfect. So my name's Billy. I'm the program manager for MusicACT. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here for the first digital program. I'm just going to hand over to Daniel to give a few words about what MusicACT has been up to the last little while, and then I'll jump back in and introduce our star speaker.
Okay. Look, yes, thank you, everyone. I think we've got 16, 17 people here today. Really excited about MusicACT's first online digital presentation with Dayna Young. But first thing I'd like to do is just do a quick acknowledgement of country. MusicACT acknowledges the Ngunnawal people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting on. MusicACT wishes to acknowledge and respect their continuing culture, especially their contribution through music and the contribution they make to life in Canberra and the region. And we'd also like to acknowledge any First Nations people with us today on whose lands we gather. MusicACT is trying to adapt as best it can to the changing situation that we're experiencing through the COVID pandemic. Our core business is to present professional development programs, typically face-to-face, but we've been watching what other organisations and institutions are doing, and we've decided to try and pull together the very best of international and national players from the music industry and bring them to Canberra over Zoom. And we're delighted to be able to kick off with Dayna Young today, who's all the way over in Denver, Colorado. I'd just like to touch on a couple of quick things that MusicACT is doing. Firstly, I think many of you may already be Music Pro members. Music Pro members is our new membership. It sets out to do a couple of major things. Firstly, is to simply build a constituency of professional musicians and music industry workers in this town, so that when we can speak to government, we can speak with one voice and in numbers. We also offer some basic benefits for Music Pro members, which include, of course, early access to our program and courses. I also want to point out that despite the difficulty across the music scene, especially now with the lockdowns continuing in New South Wales and Sydney, and the possibility of lockdowns continuing across the rest of the country, that in Canberra we do have a vibrant live music scene, and that local venues are working very hard to provide opportunities for musicians especially. We do not have touring coming to Canberra, so venues are trying to present live music, especially local live music, and that the ACT government has recently funded them to present live music. So if you're looking for gigs and you're ready to play, you should be approaching venues. So I'd like to thank the live music venues that are trying to make a go of the scene at the moment. I think I'll just hand it over to Billy to introduce Dayna Young properly, and I hope you have a really interesting time. Thank you.
Great. So we're joined by someone pretty impressive today. Dayna Young is an incredible force in the international music industry. She's a music marketing strategist that has worked with some of the biggest names in music, full stop. Some of those names would be Crooked Colors, Client Liaison, Miami Horror, PhaseOne, ShockOne, Paces, everyone under the sun. She's got a really strong background in social media marketing as well. And so today she's going to be talking about how to effectively brand yourself as a musician and as an artist, and why that is so important. So that's Dayna. I think I'll hand over to Dayna now. I think that's probably the best way to do this.
Thank you, Daniel and Billy, for the introduction. I'm excited to be here today, everybody. But now that you all know a little bit about me, I would love to hear from you guys. In the chat, just let me know a little bit about where you're from, what you do, and what you hope to learn today. All right, let's dive in.
As we go through this presentation, if you do have any questions or comments or things that you want to touch on, do drop it in the chat, and then we'll funnel that directly to Dayna. That way, we can prevent some of the Zoom chaos that is typical of Zoom. So please drop your questions in the chat.
All right, so we're all here to learn how to define your artist brand. Let's start at the beginning. What is branding? Branding is defined as the promise of a unique, lasting experience for your fans. It's about crafting a confidence in your artist brand and delivering it consistently. This means that you should take the time to truly consider your brand and to think about what the promise of a unique, lasting experience for your fans really means. Developing a clear, defined, and authentic brand, and then delivering that consistently across every touch point that a fan has with you, that's the foundation upon which successful artist brands are built. This means ensuring a consistency, not just your image, but the look and feel, the messaging, the voice, and the tone of your brand. Who here knows the difference between branding and marketing? Drop a comment in the chat for me if you do. Awesome, we have a couple of people who do, which is perfect. Branding is the image, marketing is the action, exactly. Branding is the essence of who you are, whereas marketing is the message you use to build awareness for your brands and your product and your services. Therefore, it stands to reason that branding comes first and marketing comes second. i.e., in order to effectively market your brand, you first have to know what you are promoting. It makes sense then that it would be important to clearly define your brand before you begin to plan your marketing strategies, your methods, and your tactics. Because branding sets the tone of your overall marketing strategy, it really should come first. Or let's put it another way. Branding is strategic, marketing is tactical. All right, so part of what we're going to do today is workshop a potential brand. So I would love for everyone to open Google Docs or a notes application. We're going to workshop a few questions that you can continue to work on after this webinar. We're also going to send a follow-up guide that'll outline part of what we talk about today and allow you to continue on with this workshop actions afterwards. To build your brand effectively, you need to understand exactly what you're promoting. When you place yourself side by side with your competitors, what exactly is it that sets you apart? Is it that you're able to write and produce all of your songs, or that perhaps you've won acclaim early on in your career? Are you solving a particular problem, creating songs that fall into a new or emerging genre? As you explore how you might stand out, it's important to think about your musical influences and your life story. What are some of your favorite artists? How do they brand themselves? Research how they dress, their photo lighting, settings, any backgrounds and styling that they use. Also, review the type of content they post on social media. This is going to be useful later on. And think of any words that pop into your head when you hear their songs. Are there any adjectives that you think of or colors that appear? You're going to do the same for your life journey. What are some of the key milestones that stand out to you? When did music become your focus and your passion? How did you grow up? Who were your friends, your influences? What are defining moments? Again, are there any adjectives or colors? Do these memories transcribe to you? Ensure that you write all of this down, not only to consolidate it, as we'll do a little bit later on, but as it will also be helpful for spotting opportunities as to where you might position yourself. Finding the answer to questions like these is going to be helpful to getting you on the way to building your artist brand messaging. So we're going to create a section, musical influences. In that musical influences section, I would love for you to please list 4 to 5 artist brands who speak to you the most. Again, personality, adjectives, color, looks, style. Then create another section, life story, where you're going to outline the words or phrases that describe where you came from, how you grew up, where you went to school, childhood dreams, etc. Then in another section, unique qualities, you're going to identify some of the unique qualities that separates your music from others. What colors do you envisage when you hear your own music? How would you describe your looks and style, moods and personality traits that friends might identify with you, etc. Any fashion trends that you gravitate towards, that kind of thing. In short, what we're doing here is creating a larger list of keywords which are going to be consolidated to define your brand attributes. So in a new section, you'll create your list of brand attributes. I want you to basically go through everything that you've written out above, and you're going to consolidate and highlight that above list by pulling out a shorter list of words that you connect with and placing them in your document. You're probably not going to want to do this a couple of times. You'll probably start with like 30 or 40 words. You ideally want to end up with 6. So you're going to have to cull. The next thing that you'll want to do is you're going to want to analyze your target audience. Defining your target audience is a key step in defining your overall brand. You wouldn't buy a car without first doing some research. So it stands to reason that you shouldn't take your brand out for a spin without first understanding exactly who you're talking to. After all, your goal is to engage prospective new fans, so the better you understand them, the more effectively you can communicate with them. Your goal should be to build a general understanding of your target fan base, including any relevant demographics such as age, gender, their geographic location, income, purchasing power, etc., or any other quantifiable data. I would put this as a section in the document as well, under your target audience. And then below that, you're going to want to create a new section as well for psychographic profile information. So this is things like hobbies, any books your target audience might enjoy, movies they might enjoy, websites you believe they visit, lifestyle considerations, television shows they watch, etc. Now, some of you are probably wondering, where do I get this information? If anyone has any ideas on where you think you might glean this information, put a comment in the chat for me now. Well, Spotify Analytics is exactly one spot. In fact, much of it is at your fingertips. You're going to analyze the age, gender, and if possible, the demographic of attendees at your performances. You can explore the Google Analytics data of your website traffic. You can review your social media insights, so Facebook, Google, Twitter Analytics. That's exactly right, Natasha. And you can also explore data through tools such as Chartmetric or Vibrate. You may not be able to consolidate all of this data in one go, but if you continue to revisit and define your target audience over a period of time, you're going to be able to collect information as you go and build out a much more solid profile of who you're talking to. The next thing that you want to do in defining your brand is set your goals. So revisiting the Word document, let's create another section for goals. These are not your sales goals, but the goals that you want to achieve as an artist. Do you want to release an album within the next 18 months? Is there a specific artist you would love to tour with? Would you like to be an award-nominated artist in the future? What specific awards do you want to be nominated for? Are there key brands you hope to partner with? Is it important and that you're known and referred to as a songwriter and a producer? These are all important considerations when defining your goals. In fact, defining and incorporating your goals into the vision for how you portray your artist brand will go a long way towards demonstrating your authenticity as an artist, and it's going to help you achieve those goals in return. It's also important that you have your goals defined so you can share them with your team. After all, how will they know where you want to go if you can't lead them? Once you have these goals, timeline them out. So 6 months, 18 months, and then 5 years. I would love for everyone to put one comment that they want to achieve in the next 6 months in the chat. I'd love to hear what you're looking to achieve. Awesome. Alan wants to play at a festival. Grant, play a small local music festival. Natasha, record and release a new album in 18 months. Perfect. And you put that within the timeline as well. So let's move on to brand message and identity. We explored earlier that an artist brand is defined as the promise of a unique and lasting experience for your fans. As such, you should look to craft a confidence in your brand and set about delivering that brand at every touch point. What's going to be most helpful in defining how you communicate across multiple touch points is your brand messaging and your brand identity. Brand messaging refers to the underlying value proposition conveyed and the language used in your content. It's what makes fans relate to your brand by inspiring them, persuading them, motivating them, and ultimately making them want to buy your music, tickets to your shows, or your merch. When creating your core brand promise, which is on the screen now, you should consider, when creating your core brand message, you should consider 5 or 6 key areas, one of which is brand promise. Brand promise is what are the values or experience that your fans can reasonably expect every time they interact with your brand. So for the purpose of this document, we'll call that a tagline. So examples of taglines, these are in the form of slogans, but some that you might know are like Nike, just do it, or Subway, eat fresh, things like that. Your brand promise really should be targeted towards the fan, indicate your vision, and still convey what you actually do. It can be a really tough balancing act, and it can be something that, for example, a client that I worked with recently, I was working on their brand promise statement, and I'm not lying, it took about 2 to 3 hours to whittle it down from like 18 to 20 variations. So it's not something that's necessarily going to come to you immediately, and that you might have, 25 versions of until you settle on what you want. So be patient with it. The next is brand positioning. This brief, typically 1 to 2 line description of your brand's offering is used as a tool to align with your brand and marketing efforts. So your brand positioning statement defines where you want to fit into the marketplace. It's something that can help guide both your internal and your external messaging. I believe I skipped one. Bear with me while I go back. I might be out of order. Mission statement. Your mission statement is more of a visionary angle. So what do you hope to achieve? What is your ultimate goal? What are your core beliefs? Your tone of voice. The tone of voice is your selection of words and the attitude you adopt to address your fans. It plays an important role in how your brand is perceived. So for example, if your brand identity is very warm and fuzzy, but the words that you use are harsh and direct, the two aren't necessarily going to align. And that's going to put people off because you have a few seconds when someone comes to check out your music and then they perhaps go to your website or your social pages. If your music doesn't connect with your identity and what you say, it's going to be really off-putting to potential fans, and it really can disengage the experience. Tone of voice is especially important in the copywriting part of your messaging. As I said, it defines the tone that you want to use for your brand. Are you going for more of a fun, playful brand? Does your audience require a more serious tone? I would say here, don't be afraid to have a little bit of fun with the tone development exercises. It can help to compare your brand to like different celebrities, songs, other companies, movies, cities, etc. It helps you get a feel for the tone that would be most appropriate for your business, which is your artist brand. So for example, if my brand were a celebrity, it would be George Clooney. It wouldn't, that's just an example. I can't do George Clooney. The next is your elevator pitch. And there's 3 sections to this. The first is how would you describe your brand in 10 words? And that's usually something that you'll find can be used, bear with me. Things are freezing. Elevator pitch, 10 words, is something that can be used on your social platforms. 50 words is for your DSPs, and your 500 words is your full bio. Defining your elevator pitch into the 10, 50, and 500 word idealizations is something that can really help you go a long way towards simplifying your brand messaging. The last is your brand pillars. So an artist should never talk about just one thing, music. It's really important that you share the why of what you do with your fans. So here I would start breaking your brand positioning, your mission statement and promise into brand pillars that describe the 3 most important selling points of your brand. So something that I often recommend for artists is there's a couple of brand pillars that are just going to be consistent. One is music, the other is promotion, and then you probably want another 2 to 3 potential content pillars that you can continue to talk about. So for example, an artist that I work with, mental health advocacy is really important to them, and that's messaging that we work into their conversation on a regular basis. Each brand pillar should be supported by a key benefit statement and some supporting examples. The reason is that these pillars will inform the focus points of your marketing content, and they're really going to help you drive the conversations that you have. Now, something that was missing here is also adding in a brief description of your audience. So under your brand messaging, you should have your brand promise, your brand positioning, a short description of your target audience, your mission statement, information on your tone and voice, your elevator pitch, and your brand pillars. Once you've filled in each of the above items or using a messaging chart of your own, you'll have a really solid messaging framework in place. It's going to be useful because it's going to make sure your go-to-market messages are all consistent and tie all the pieces of your content together. This will ensure that the fan experience isn't fragmented by any mismatched messages, and most importantly, is going to help your fans see your brand the way you want it to be seen. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the fun part. Once you've worked through all of the above steps, you're going to create a vision board. I would suggest something like Pinterest, but if you Google vision boards or mood boards, there's a number of online tools that you can use as well. You should turn on your music and play it while you do this task. It'll help you get in the mood. One by one, taking those consolidated list of the brand attributes that you created earlier, you're going to browse pictures and add them to the board. So you want to specifically be looking at things like colors, tones, fashion, poses, key camera work, lighting, backgrounds, settings, props, other artist inspiration. For example, an artist that I work with, we actually did this exercise recently, and there was quite a few kind of 70s artists that informed her inspiration and are going to potentially inform her style and look and feel. And so we pulled those into these boards. Anything that really jumps out, this is about what you connect with on an emotional level and what you feel is really visually connected to the attributes that you wrote down. You're going to add them to your board. You're going to repeat until, you get maybe a little cross-eyed and bored with it, basically. Then leave it a day or two and repeat the task. But when you repeat the task, I want you to create a new board, and then you're going to review the first board, and you're going to add only the imagery that you connect with the most to the new board. So essentially, this is another consolidation exercise. Once you've done the second board, leave it another day or two, come back, and you're going to do the same exercise again. And ideally, you want to end up with about no more than 12 to 18 images, which represent your brand attributes. That final board, this is going to become the direction for the look and feel of what's going to become your brand identity. What next? Well, let's take a look at what you'll have completed at the end of the process. You should have 6 brand attribute keywords, your target audience information, your goals, your brand messaging, your brand identity. But what you really have is a brand strategy that you can take to your designer to have a complete assets kit designed. The assets kit should be presented as a brand guidelines kit back to you by your designer. It should include ideally a stylescape, your logo, fonts, and best practice direction as to how to use the assets. The brand strategy and the brand guidelines kit can then be given to everyone on your team to ensure that they know exactly how to present your brand to potential new fans in a way that ensures consistency at every touch point. By creating a coherent brand story, you can consistently communicate at every fan interaction touch point. It's going to be an immensely valuable tool for you. Understanding not just what you're doing, making music, but the reason why you're doing it, your brand, will go an incredibly long way towards creating stronger fan connections via your marketing. When you think of your artist brand as a starting point, it becomes a lot easier to see how clearly defining your artist brand will help you more effectively plan a release marketing strategy, build your e-commerce store or fan club, or sell tickets to your upcoming tour. Well, that concludes the workshop part of today's presentation. I hope you all found it valuable, and feedback is certainly welcome. We're going to open things up for questions now, and I'll hand back to Billy in a second so he can field your questions for me. But before you do that, I want to ask one thing of you. If you enjoyed today's session and you feel like you got a lot from it, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could leave me a review on my business, my Google My Business profile. And if you're feeling it, follow Fred and Augustus on Instagram. I'll put some links in the chat now and I hand back over to Billy. All right, Billy, back to you.
Thanks, Dayna. Always got a plug. You got to do it. Thank you everyone for coming today. We've got a couple of questions to go through. If you do have any that kind of pop up to you as we talk about them, please just put them in the chat, or feel free to unmute and talk about it if it's, you know, you want to extrapolate a little bit more. Just while you guys are thinking about that, I'll just let you know as well that this is not the last time you'll see Dayna. She's going to be doing another 2 digital workshops. You guys are the first people to know about that. The next one is going to be on how to get found online. So those kind of SEO basics for musicians, how to kind of tailor your online presence to be more easily found. And the one after that will be on how to build a social media content strategy, which I think is something that everyone needs help with always. So yeah, so those 2 are coming up. If you did like this one, keep an eye on your email inbox and we'll be sending you a chance to sign up for that one as well. So I think it's time to get into some questions. Let's start with one from D-Dub and Ruth O'Brien. This one says, what if my brand is about rejection of marketing / branding and consumerism in general?
That's a hard one. That's a really hard one. I mean, my innate marketer sensibilities say no, in that it's incredibly hard in today's environment as an artist to not market yourself in some sense. So I think really what you're going to be, it's going to be less about identifying your brand, because obviously it sounds like your brand is identified, and more about how you connect any potential marketing to an anti-marketing message that is in your branding.
Thanks, Dayna. I've got another question from Joey Stevens. Hey, Joey. How do you clearly and in a fresh manner do this branding process with artists who have already established their branding but want to change?
Really doing the same thing that we just worked through now. An artist that I worked with recently is quite well established, has over 200,000 Facebook followers, for example. So there's a strong brand in existence, but there were some disconnect points throughout the brand. So we went through this exercise to really kind of get back to basics and look at the potential for repositioning, and then not just the potential for repositioning, but looking at how what the distance was between the existing brand and where we wanted to potentially reposition to, so that we had a plan for how to move towards that. So I mean, I would do exactly the same thing that we've talked through doing today, and really kind of looking at what the strengths and weaknesses are, and then determining how you're going to, I would say that you potentially, it really depends on how different the two brands are going to be. If there's a lot of distance between the existing brand and where you want to reposition to, then you potentially want to do that in a few steps rather than it being a complete pivot. But if they're quite close together, you can potentially rebrand your assets, your identity, and your messaging, and pivot quite quickly. So it really depends on what the outcome of this type of exercise is.
Awesome. Thanks, Dayna. We've got another question from Alan. He says, do you have any tips on expanding your audience's age demographic while still being authentic?
Can we ask for some more information? What is the current demographic and where are they hoping to move to?
Question.
Feel free to put it in the chat.
Yeah, Alan, chuck that in the chat because I think you're going to get a pretty good answer to that. I have a question. When you're going through this branding process, what are some of the issues, the common issues that you've found if you're working with an artist that doesn't necessarily have the experience? Are there any like common things that tend to become sticking points, or is there anything that you should watch out for when you're going through this process?
I think it is really helpful to have an artist who is really willing to lean into the process and who wants to be a part of it, because I mentioned this in the presentation, but how can your team around you steer the direction in which you go if you're not leading? It has to be your vision as an artist, and that takes a lot of vulnerability and also a lot of self-awareness and self-realization to be able to really lean into that process and start to question some of the things that we went through today. And I think it can be helpful to have someone who can push and challenge you on the ideas and the direction that you're coming up with, and give you feedback throughout that process. But I do think like it works best when people lean in.
Right. Thanks, Dayna. Just got to encourage them.
Yeah, and Google is your friend, right?
Sure,
If
yeah.
you're unsure about like any of the topics that we've touched on today, like I've written some articles about it that you can find online. There's also some other articles on my website that I post regularly, but also Google, and there's a lot of information. How to find information on your target audience, how to brand identity kits, things like that. If you're unsure and you feel that you're new and fresh and that some of it is unnerving to you, use the tools at your fingertips and learn what you can.
Just returning to Alan's question about expanding audience demographics. He says that most of his fans are older fans now, but he's looking to branch into younger audiences.
Okay. Collaborations are a perfect way. Collaborating with younger up and coming artists that potentially have I would say like not necessarily like a controversial point of view, but a really unique point of view that is going to allow you to position yourself in a new way, in a new light, and bring new fans into the fold. Collaborations are a perfect way to largen, is that a word? Broaden your fan base and to find new fans, and also as well to portray your artist identity in a way that shows that you are engaging in your community and supporting others as well. I would say you're in wanting to remain authentic to that. It still needs to be artists that align with your brand or that you feel add something to the equation. And I would do it in small steps as well, in that it's something that you want to develop over time, because you don't want to alienate the audience that you do have. You want to retain that audience while still engaging a newer fan base. So it needs to be done carefully and with consideration, for sure.
All right, I think we'll do maybe 2 more questions and then go from there. This one is from Joey again. Thanks, Joey. He says, I understand I understand that it's a bigger concept, but how is the best way to effectively implement your branding through performance? You mentioned merchandising and messaging, but how do you work with artists to extend it to musicianship on stage and the finer details like stage detailing?
Yeah, full disclosure, I don't really have a lot to do with the performance side anymore. My background is as an agent, and I've pivoted into marketing. So, you know, I really am more on the strategic marketing side of things. But I would say that banners, you know, are a perfect example. Again, ensuring that every touch point from when someone purchases the ticket, what does the confirmation email say? What does the reminder email say? Your bands in town blasts, what are you communicating about those shows? What is the specific wording that you're choosing to use? When someone visits your website, is that branding consistent versus what your Facebook looks like? Your email subscriber list, you know, again, is that all consistent? How regularly do they go out? What information do you give about the shows? That type of thing. I think what's really important about the brand strategy and the kit, as I said, is that it's something that can be given to everyone on your team. And it then informs, like, as I said, things like tone of voice, the logo usage, the colors, etc. So it is something that you can use to impact or influence all of your decisions, from not just like I'm going on tour, but I'm going on tour. What's the email marketing saying? What are the ads saying? What footage are we using for the ads? All right, we've gotten to the show. When someone enters the venue, what do they see? How does it feel? What do I say when I'm on stage? That kind of thing. And I think that kit and that brand messaging strategy is something you can always refer back to for being your gold standard on what you want to do and say and how you want to look and feel.
Okay. All right, and one last one from Ruth O'Brien. Who is an artist that you think does branding well in a really authentic way?
John Mayer, Charlie Puth, although he's a little odd, but I like it. Shawn Mendes, Camila Cabello, Doja Cat. Just a few. Yeah.
They're good ones. Yeah, good. Perfect. All right. Well, unless anyone else has any other questions, last chance. No. Cool. All right. Thanks everyone for coming. It's great to see everyone here. We'll definitely send out a template of what we went over today as well. That outlines a little bit of what Dayna was talking about, as well as that process of defining your artist brand. That should come out to you probably on Monday. Thank you so much everyone for being here. This was really great turnout for the first one of these. So please tell everyone about it, how great it was, how great Dayna is, everything in between. And yeah, thanks so much.
Have a good day, everybody.
Farewell. Yeah, no worries. See you later, everyone.